welcome to the Intuitive Insights podcast series. I'm Nina Lockwood, founder and director of Intuitive Interim and Executive Search. Throughout this series, I will be sharing engaging conversations with talented leaders from across the UK transport sector. I'm delighted to welcome Rajinder Pryor MBE to this episode of Intuitive Insights. Rajinder is well known in the industry for her support of women in rail, for equality, diversity and inclusion, and for cultural change to support the industry being fit for the future. I really hope you enjoy my conversation with Rajinder as much as I did. Rajinder Pryor, MBE, welcome to the Intuitive Insights podcast. I'm absolutely delighted that you've been able to join me.
Thank you, Anina. It's a pleasure to join you.
So at the moment, Senior Account Manager, Network Rail Telecom, but lots of other strings to your bow. And I'm really looking forward to hearing about how you came into your career in the first place, what you've done as you've gone along the way, and all those extra things, because the MBE has been awarded for your services around diversity and inclusion and raising awareness around domestic abuse. I know that's threaded throughout your life story as well. And I'm really am looking forward to hearing about your journey so far. So I'm going to hand over to you. Please take us right back to the beginning, Rajinder, and talk us through your career to date.
Brilliant, thank you. So I'll start with where it did start, which was my mum used to be a seamstress working at home. And I remember as a young girl sitting by her and watching her make, sewing and making these clothes. And that really did inspire me to want to be in the fashion industry and to want to make clothes. So as I got older, I decided to go into to go to college, and I studied fashion design and textiles. I then moved into the high street retailer industry, and I worked for a number of high street retailers. I worked for Wallis, Whistles, River Island, and I got involved in the manufacturing side. So this was at a time when the manufacturing side was, it was quite prevalent in the UK. But at the same time, IT started to make its way to the forefront, and being a junior, nobody really wanted to touch the IT systems and get involved. So what actually happened was, at the same time, there was a number of things that sort of almost happened at the same time. So the IT system started to really gain traction, and I started to sort of lead some of the implementation. But the factories and the sourcing of garments started to go offshore, so it started to move to Turkey, Morocco, etc. So I could see that things were sort of really shifting. But at the same time, the retail industry realised that they needed to really invest in their future leaders, and so the industry came together, and they pulled together an industry degree. It was a management degree. It was put together with a number of retailers, and it was led by London College of Fashion. So I worked full time. I also did the degree part time, so that was two nights a week for 4 years. Right. And I came through. I came out of that with my degree, and by that time the industry had changed quite a lot. And what was really interesting for me was that I chose to actually do my dissertation on the perceived threats of IT on the future of high street retailing.
Oh wow! Okay.
So interestingly, everything that we see now was kind of some of the things that I'd done a lot of research on, in terms of this is what the future of high streets and retailers will look like. And I recognised that, and I decided, well, the job that I'm doing now, it probably won't exist because everything's going offshore. So actually, now's the opportunity for me to do something different. And what I did was I decided to move into the IT industry.
Right.
And how I got into the IT industry was I decided to take a real leap of faith And I gave up my job because I didn't want to stay in the retail industry. And I went to a design fair. I went to a job fair, sorry, and I met a sales director from a consultancy. And I sparked up a conversation with him, and I explained to him that I'd done this dissertation, and this is what the way I felt the future of high streets and retailers was going. And he was so interested in what I had to say in my dissertation. He invited me back to talk to one of their directors. So I went off to talk to one of their directors, and I explained to them, my thinking and my research. And at that time, the research that I'd done, there were very few retailers who actually had transactional websites.
Okay.
And many of them had just logged a domain name. And so I could see that the future was that these retailers, they would be shifting from the high street and in shops and online. And that was a real sort of area where IT would really help. So on the back end of this, and I guess it's luck as well, because in my dissertation, I'd quoted one of the directors at the consultancy who'd written white paper on something similar.
Right.
And the fact I quoted him was it immediately brought us onto the same kind of thing, thought level.
Yeah.
So the result of that was that they said, would you like to come and work for us? So I moved into, and it was Logica, which is now part of CGI. Yeah. So I moved and worked with them in their industry, distribution, and transport function of their business. Right. And I never worked in retail again, actually, which was really interesting. So that was where it really started for me in terms of my real introduction to transport, I guess.
Yeah. And so there's a couple of things here that I kind of want to go into in a bit more detail. You mentioned almost in passing that you were part of the Future Leaders team and you did the degree with the London College of Fashion. How were you selected for that? How did you get to be on that course? Because presumably that wasn't open to everyone. How did they identify that you were a future leader? What is it about you?
I guess one of the things was that I was really keen to learn. I think the fact that I was really, really keen to get in with the IT and understand the change. And I think that's, again, that's where my sort of real love for change came. I embraced it. I've never fought change. I've kind of always gone with it. Even when it's painful, I've gone with it. And I think that was a clear indicator for them that I was keen to move. I was keen to change things. But I think it was also the fact that I had a very different perspective from other people, because I had a really good understanding of fashion, because I understood the real the real detail of it, how to make a garment, how to construct a garment, because I'd always watched my mum. Yeah. So I really understood that bit, but I also understood the mechanics of manufacturing.
Right.
And putting all of that together. And on top of that, I worked in McDonald's, I'd worked in a shoe shop, so I really understood customer service and how to talk to customers, what they wanted, and understanding that. So that kind of gave a real rounded view of the sort of thing that they wanted, they wanted in a future leader in that industry.
Yeah. I think that, when you talk about the fact that you used to watch your mum when she was doing her job as a seamstress, that I think that speaks volumes about you, because you must have had a passion for it, because I honestly cannot imagine my daughter coming and watching me do my work. But I also think it speaks volumes about your mum, because she must have inspired you. She must have been kind of, involving you and talking to you about what she was doing, how she was doing it, why she was doing it. And all that's kind of sinking in, isn't it? And soaking into to you and your kind of wanting to learn how to do things. And then that obviously has a knock-on effect as you've gone through your career.
Yeah, it was. I think in, you know, in those days, working, you know, my mum didn't speak English, so she didn't speak English, so going out to work wasn't an option. She had young children, and she needed to stay at home to look after those look after us. There were four of us. Things were very difficult at home as well, so we didn't have a very happy family life. So her working, and she worked very, very long hours. Her working was her only form of independence.
Right. Yeah.
And in a way, absolutely. And in a way, she was working because she had three daughters. And, you know, I came from a family where the burden of having three daughters was quite heavy, right. You know. So she felt that she needed to work even harder because she needed to contribute to the fact that she had three daughters to marry off. And that was her mentality. And that was one of the things that really drove her.
Yeah, yeah. And that I find that fascinating. You know, we don't have those kind of motivations, do we, all the time? And I think, you know, I've got a really good friend of mine who, if you look at her, you would say, wow, successful businesswoman, overnight sensation, built a business very quickly, sold it for a lovely amount of money, and you know, has a lovely life as a result. But if you kind of pedal back a bit and you go into her story, there was a real reason why she had to set that business up in the first place, because her husband was a farmer, foot and mouth disease had hit, they'd got three children, they were trying to survive on £150 a month. You can't do it with five people to feed. So the only thing she had was that she could cook. So she set up a catering business, and, you know, the rest is history. But she was in a situation where something had to happen. It wasn't a choice about, oh gosh, right, what shall I do today? What career do I fancy? With the story with your mum there, you know, there's a real imperative, isn't there, to need to do something and to need to work hard because there's a result, there's an outcome that you're aiming for. Yeah, wow, whole different level of work ethic.
Yeah, and I just on that point, actually, I think that's where the work ethic came, because, you know, my father used to work as well, mum used to work, and that work ethic, it was so ingrained in us.
Yeah.
From a very early age. So we never lost that. I don't think any of my siblings, we're all very much the same in terms of that work ethic, and that's because we saw it. And also, as you know, because our parents were immigrants, that when they came over, they felt really, really strongly about contributing and about working for whatever they need, whatever they needed. Yeah. There was no expectation for anyone to give them anything, and if that meant both of them working very, very long hours, then that was how it was. So it's a very it's a very strong ethic.
Yeah, and it's a mindset, isn't it? It's an attitude that I have to do this. This is the way I am, rather than, well, I'll sit here and wait and then somebody else will come over and give me something or tell me what to do or whatever. It's kind of, no, actually, I'm going to make my own decisions, my own choices, and work hard and provide. So I love these kind of stories. I love the background into where that work ethic comes from. So we're at Logica, and you've left the retail sector behind and fashion, and moved into a completely different area, but focusing on IT, which I guess was, if somebody had come anywhere near me and talked about IT, Rajinder, I'd have run at 100 miles an hour in the opposite direction. But you found something that was interesting, that fascinated you, that you wanted to learn about. So the role at Logica, are there any kind of standout moments for you in terms of, like, gosh, I love what I do here?
It's really interesting because I actually was in touch with my manager, who's still actually at Logica, and it was really interesting because I remember her telling me, Rajinder, it's up to you what you want to do. Because I remember going to consultancy and thinking, well, what role do I do? Because there are so many roles. And she said, it's up to you. What do you want to do? And I think one of the things that I felt really strongly about, and I suppose this is where the customer service thing came out as well, was I wanted to work with people. So I absolutely loved being on client site. I loved, I really did love being with lots of different people, meeting lots of new teams, having lots of different new conversations all the time. So I really lapped that up. And I was quite fortunate because I was able to go to a number of, large different clients. I've made some great friends at Ford. I worked at the CPS. I worked at Thompson Travel Group, and then I was even involved in the first congestion charging bid for London. So all those things put together really gave me, an invaluable experience. And I don't think I ever, and as we're talking, it's interesting because I don't ever really think I worried about the role that I was in. Right. I just wanted to enjoy what I was doing. And it's interesting because when I think about where I am now, I'm quite happy moving from role to role as long as I'm enjoying what I'm doing and making a difference and working with people. So that's kind of where it took me.
Yeah. And were you aware of that all the way through, that the thing for you is people, or did it just all of a sudden dawn on you that actually I'm enjoying this role and I enjoyed the last one because it's around people? Or has that kind of just evolved as you've gone through your career?
I think it's evolved, actually. I don't think I realised early on that it was the people that I liked being around. And now I reflect, I think I used the people as a safety net. Right. I think because I hadn't always had a close network. I think there was something comforting about having lots of people around me. Yes. And working with lots of people. Yeah. And that gave me energy, and that also actually gave me some kind of support. Yeah. Yeah, and that's really important, isn't it? That kind of, and I think that over the last 18 months, whilst many people have experienced a lot of benefit about working from home, then so many people that I've had conversations with have said that it's the energy that they miss of being in a space with other people, and that feeling of support. It's huge. Mm-hmm. It's kind of, it's like it's your tribe. It's they're your people, and they're there. And yes, we're working in an office together, but actually it can feel like so much more than that when it's been missing. So yeah. So when you've worked on a really wide ranging client base there, really interesting. When did you make the decision that time was up at Logica and you wanted to move on to the next thing? What prompted that? What prompted it was I got married. I met my husband. I got married, and then unexpectedly I had my first child. Right. So I wasn't expecting, and there's, I think I often say there is no good time to have a child. It just happens. You can't plan for that. No matter how you plan. And I think for me, the timing was quite difficult because I just started my new career in IT. It was still quite male dominated in that industry, and the consultancy lifestyle didn't quite work for me with a young child. So at that point, my husband and I, we had a real good chat about it, and we decided that I had this real passion to continue with my career and build that career, because I'd only just made the change. Yeah. So so he decided, so he was more than happy and willing to stay at home and become a full-time stay-at-home dad well before it became fashionable, which he did, which was fantastic. And that gave me the space to do, to continue with my career, And that's when I made the transition and I moved to Network Rail, because it meant that I didn't have to travel so much, so that I could come home regularly. Well, I could come home every day, basically.
Yeah. As you say, the consultant's lifestyle, it's really great if it's the right period in your life. I know when I used to do it and I enjoyed it, and then you kind of reach a point where being away all the time, being in hotels all the time, and it is not conducive with a young family. It just doesn't work. I'm sure, I'm saying that, I'm sure there are some people who make it work, but you do have to have incredibly supportive people around you, I think, in order to kind of make it work. I was talking to somebody yesterday, actually, who was sharing her story about she'd done some consultancy work earlier on in her career, and her parents actually said to her at one point, you really do need to assess where your priorities are here, as a family. So not just her, but her partner as well, because the children were kind of being farmed out left, right and centre, and kind of, they're at an age where they need the family around them. And I guess that's the joy of having the flexibility to do different things as you move through your career and make a choice about what's important at different points. So
absolutely.
Why Network Rail then? Was it the right job at the right time, or how did that happen?
Well, what actually happened was there was an opportunity there was an opportunity to go and work on a client site through Logica.
Right.
So I thought, well, let me go and have a look and see what it's like at Network Rail. And at the same time, I applied for a permanent job at Network Rail, because I thought, well, actually, if I don't like it, I won't. I'll go for the interview while I'm there. If I don't like it, I'll stay Logica. So I did, sort of hedge my bets. And when I came in, I really did take to it. And I think one of the reasons I took to it was because of the complexity, and because of the fact that it was so different, lots of different facets of to Network Rail, and there were lots of people. I think again, I think that was what drew me.
Yeah.
And I think there was something else as well. It was about the fact that I felt that there were things that I had in my in my career that were transferable. So for example, when we talk about constructing garments and manufacturing, there was an element of it which was similar to engineering. So you make things, you construct things, there's a lot of quality control around it. So I think that made it easier, because I could see some similarities, so it wasn't completely new. And that helped me make the transition. And it was the fact that there was, it was a service. And I think one of the things, and I do talk a lot about this, especially sort of more so now, is that one of the other principles that was strongly embedded in me from a very young age, coming from a Sikh family, was one of the principles, which is seva, which is translated as selfless service, and it's to serve your community. And it's something that as you grow up, it's not about yourself, it's about what you can do for others, and it's how you how you communicate, how you provide, how you collaborate and work with wider communities, so that it serves everybody. And I think that's one of the things that I guess it was my it was a bit of my why. Why am I here? What am I going to do? And that really did make me feel like this is the right place for me.
Yeah. There's so many people out there in this industry who, certainly when I speak to them about, why rail, why transport, why do you want to work in this area? And there is this kind of passion that people have, and this inbuilt need that they have to do something which makes a difference. And it's that kind of phrase, because I want to make a difference, is so often I have conversations around this, and that kind of wanting to be part of something bigger, which is doing something good. And that's getting people from A to B for whatever reason that is, but it's supporting the economy, it's supporting communities, it's supporting society. And you've done, I mean, you've been at Network Rail a while now, so it's kind of when I had a look on your LinkedIn profile earlier, and it's kind of so nearly 17 years, and you've done quite a wide range of jobs. So when you look back at those, are there any of those particular roles that stand out as being kind of like the ones that where you really felt like you were in flow, and other ones maybe that you've got kind of a, I don't know, like a sliding doors moment, where, oh, well, I made that choice instead of that one, and that's actually taken me to where I am today?
Yeah, I think again, it's where one of the places that I think I really felt home at was at station. I think I absolutely loved working at station. It felt, again, it's a family. It really did feel like a family.
Yeah.
And I think all the staff, you know their families, you get to know about them, and that we spend so much time at work, and we spend so much time with other people. If you really genuinely care about each other and want to get to know each other, you do get to know each other, and you become real close friends as well. Yeah. So I think I think that really was a big moment for me.
Yeah.
And I guess I think my love affair with IT sort of moved away, because I realised actually it wasn't IT, it was the people side of things that I enjoyed more.
Yeah.
I think also I just loved to change. Whenever there was something new, I wanted to be in it. I wanted to be in the middle of it, just because it was something new and it was something different. And I guess I kind of wanted to contribute. It was that I wanted to add something to something, something different. I wanted to be a part of it.
Yeah. So, and that makes perfect sense to me. That kind of, because IT in itself is an enabler of change, isn't it? So it's kind of maybe not getting excited about the IT in itself, but what it enables, how it supports change within an organisation and within an industry. And we're seeing that obviously at the moment as well, aren't we, with all of the things over the last 18 months that have been accelerated in terms of how we use technology differently in the industry. And oh gosh, so much change over the last 18 months, and lots more to come, which I'm interested in getting your thoughts on. But before we do that, it would be really remiss of me just to kind of move on from your career story without coming back to the MBE and the honour that you've had given to you for the work that you've done, the really important work, full stop, but actually in this industry where we've got a way to go in terms of our diversity and inclusion culture. Where did that come from, Rajinder? Where did that passion and that desire and that kind of actually the energy to be involved with the number of things that you're involved with and the difference that you've made, where does that come from?
I think it came from sort of an inner something inside me. I think one of the things that really happened to me was I just felt lost. I felt like I'd been on a treadmill. I'd had quite a good career. I managed to move things, but I got stuck and I wasn't feeling fulfilled. And then, interestingly, I had some coaching because I felt I couldn't move. I couldn't move forward. I was stuck. I didn't know which way I was going to go. And I had coaching, and it was just like a revelation. It really was. And I think one of the reasons was because I'd never stopped to think.
Yeah.
And actually, I think one of the things I realised was I was actually quite afraid to think.
Okay.
And I was afraid to think, because thinking would have forced me to sort of think about all the things that I'd kind of buried, the things that I didn't want to face, the things that I found difficult. And part of that was the things that were holding me back.
Right.
And so, you know, so when I started through coaching, when I started to explore this, I realized that no one else was holding me back. Right. Nothing was holding me back. It was all me. It was all down to me. And that's quite a difficult thing to, to sort of hold yourself to account.
Yeah.
So I had that, I had this I had the coaching, and then I remember I walked into I remember this very, very clearly. I walked into a Women in Rail workshop.
Right.
And I remember walking to this Women in Rail workshop, and I remember coming out thinking, I'm going to change myself. Wow. I'm going to change what I'm doing. I know what I'm going to do, but I'm going to change myself.
Right.
And we had, and I remember, I remember that session. We had a two-way session. I was actually with Rachel Turner.
Right. I know Rachel.
She didn't even get a chance to speak because she was. It's just, it was all about me, and she was so generous with her time, to be fair. And I remember going home, and I didn't know anything. I didn't know much about Women in Rail, and I remember going onto the website and going into contacts and emailing and saying, I have just come out of that workshop, and do you know what it's done for me?
Wow.
I'm going to change myself. And I really started to think about all the things that that were holding me back. And one of those things was the fact that I felt so much shame, and I felt so negative that that I wasn't a success. I wasn't able to be a success. I wasn't worthy. All these things were holding me back.
Yeah.
And and I guess I just started to, I had the opportunity to talk about why I was feeling that way, and I opened up. And the moment I opened up and I started to talk about the impact that domestic abuse and honour abuse had on me, it really opened up not only things for me, but I think the way others opened up as well. It just had an amazing impact. And from that moment, I really decided, I think I really decided that my why then was going to be about raising awareness, supporting others. And I realized what I had been given, and I wanted to give that back to other people, because I realized how difficult, and I've been on this journey, I've been holding things in for about 20, 30 odd years.
Yeah.
Before I was able to even sort of think about speaking about these things. And it was just so liberating and so empowering.
Yeah. That's it's one of the words that I was thinking of when you're describing that then, is that when you decide to, because we've all got a box, haven't we, that's got a lid on, and there's stuff in there that the lid's firmly closed, and we don't want to go there because it's uncomfortable, or it hurts, or it's whatever emotion, it's generally not a positive one. But by taking that decision to take the lid off and start to get some of this stuff out of the box and talk about it and think about it and feel it, you've given yourself, there's kind of like, it's scary because you've got the accountability then to do something about it, and you've kind of give yourself, you've used the word liberating there, and the word that was in my head was freedom, because you've let all this stuff kind of go into the ether, but the strength that you have had yourself to be able to do that, to then share that experience with other people, is just massive. Because the impact then, it's the ripple effect, isn't it? It's not just helped you in your life, but it's helped so many other people. And I mean, you were involved in the Rail to Refuge scheme, weren't you, last year? Which I just, it made me really emotional when I read about it, in terms of what the rail industry was doing to help people who were in just a really kind of bloody dreadful, even worse position than everyone else was in lockdown. So being involved with stuff like that is having that amazing ripple effect, using your experience.
Yeah, and I think I think COVID added more attention to it during the pandemic and raised greater awareness. But I think it also filters down to the way we the way we behave, the way what our attitudes and beliefs, and how we work together. I haven't always felt comfortable in sharing my vulnerability. I haven't always felt that, I haven't always felt safe in an environment to sort of say this is how I feel, and I know what that feels like.
Yeah.
And so, by sharing, I think it gives other people permission as well to say, actually, yeah, I feel like that too, and there's nothing wrong with that. I think the biggest thing that I've got from that is that it's not a weakness.
No.
I think the first thing that I worried was, people are going to think I'm weak. People are going to think I can't cope in my job. People are going to think that I'm not resilient enough. And then I looked and I thought, I'm all those things, which is why I'm able to do this.
Absolutely, you are. Yeah. And I think whenever, I read a few articles leading up to our conversation today, read a few things about you around kind of the MBE and so on. The words courage and resilience come up time and time again. And I think it's, it's kind of easy, and a lot of people do, not to recognise that to get where you've got to and to be who you are, and that your whole self, it takes a huge amount of strength and a huge amount of resilience to do that, especially when you've had difficult times to cope with. But there's a great quote which is quite often attributed to Nelson Mandela, because it's a speech that it was part of his speech when he was released from prison. But it was actually Marianne Williamson. I'm looking down here because I have it on my wall in my office, and it's kind of the same, but what you're talking about, it's called Our Deepest Fear, and it's amazing, and I'll send it to you after we've finished this recording. But it says, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? Your playing small does not serve the world. We're all meant to shine. As we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. And you are well and truly letting your light shine. And I know you're giving back in so many different ways. And you've mentioned the Women in Rail workshop, and you're a trustee now, aren't you? Of the
I am.
Yeah.
I could never in a million years have thought that was possible. Never in a million years could I have thought that was possible.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably why I take it so seriously. Any time, any energy that I have, I put into that, because I feel that I got so much out of it myself. And I want to be able to make sure that other women, and men, get the same. And I think I just think it's I just think it's a fantastic organization.
Yeah.
It's growing from strength to strength. And to be honest, in the railway industry, I think we're lucky to have something like Women in Rail, because it really is a cornerstone of what we stand for.
Yeah,
collectively.
Absolutely. And so kind of that's leading us into a conversation about the railway of the future. So as we go, clearly we're going through this massive change and transformation that we needed to do. It needed to happen anyway, but the pandemic has accelerated in a lot of areas. In terms of the future, what would, if I could give you 3 wishes, Rajinder, to say, what 3 wishes could we grant for you that would give the railway of the future, it would look like you would like it to look? Or in other words, because that was all very clunky how I've just worded that, but if you were the boss, what would you be doing? What would be the 3 most important things you would focus on?
I think the first thing would be just the collaboration. I think we're still not working together as, we are working together, but I think, that there's a lot more to be done to work more closely and seamlessly together.
Yeah.
So I think, you know, that we are kind of, you know, we're lots of small, lots of small little parts, but we haven't quite got how we work together seamlessly. So I think there's, a bit more work to be done there. I think that will really strengthen the industry, but also it will leave something in terms of a legacy about how we want to work, you know, together, and how we want other people to work together in the future as well.
Yeah.
Because whatever we're doing now and whatever we've done in the past, it hasn't been it hasn't quite hit the mark, and that's why we're constantly changing. And we're constantly changing because we need to keep adapting. Customers want more, quite rightly, and we need to adapt, and we need to keep and I see some similarities to retail. I sort of really do see that actually, if we don't adapt, we will lose what we have, and we've got a great rail industry. If you go and look at our high streets, they're not what they used to be, and it's because they haven't quite adapted. They haven't kind of thought about where they should position themselves. So I think there's some learnings there, that we can take. I also think, and this is something that I know lots of people get frustrated with, and it's very difficult when you're when you're funded by the public purse. But the governance and the bureaucracy, I think that there is a place for governance, absolutely. But I think it kind of throttles us in a way sometimes. It stops that innovation. It stops a little bit of risk taking. You need to take a little bit of an informed risk to kind of move forward. And I guess the final thing, the third thing for me, would be just, there's something about the people element. We've made, I think during the pandemic, I think we've made some great progress about how we treat each other.
Definitely.
And that's not a bad thing. But it's how do we continue and make this work, going forward for both, and it's got to work for individuals, but also it's got to work for organisations as well. And it's finding that balance. And I think, it's a very difficult thing that, I'm talking about it, and I can imagine people saying, well, Rajinder, how are you going to do it then? But, but I do think there's something happening now in all my 17 years of working in network, and I'm sure there's people who've worked longer, but it does feel different. It does feel that things have moved forward. I think there's less skepticism, I think, as well. I think you can see that we've done things during the pandemic. We've done things that I'm sure people thought, oh, we can't do that. We can't do that. So I think it's a great example to say, actually, we can do things that we never thought we could do.
Yeah. And some of that, to kind of go back to your second point, some of that governance and bureaucracy, it certainly feels from an outside perspective that there's been a sensible conversation that says, what of that do we need? And so we are in, when we were kind of going back to March 2020, we're in a crisis. We can't have 10 meetings to sign off every bit of this and get, the world and his wife involved. We've got to act quickly. So how can we do that? And it has been done. It has been achieved. The collaboration has been achieved. So for me, and quite a few people that I know, we've got this massive desire for the industry to continue to be bold and be brave about that type of behaviour. Let's not slip back to what we were doing before and the kind of the lack of collaboration, or the going back to, well, no, we've got to go through it with a fine-tooth comb, cross every T and dot every I, and the whole governance and bureaucracy. We're a safety critical industry. There has to be regulation, there has to be governance, but we also need pace and we need change. So there's going to be an interesting balance there, isn't there? For sure.
There is, and I think it's the mindset. I think I'd like to think that people's mindsets have changed a little bit. That they've moved. I think that's really important, because if we don't have the right mindset, then it's very difficult to bring everybody along with you.
Yeah, it really is. And I guess that leads me next into my three final questions for you. So we do like to leave our audience with some kind of specific inspiration, I guess, in terms of things to think about and things to look at. Rajinder, is there a leader that whether that's a thought leader, whether it's an actual business leader, somebody you've worked with throughout your career, is there somebody that stands out for you as being an inspirational leader? And you don't have to name them, but if not, could you tell us a bit about why they inspire you?
I think seeing women in senior roles has definitely been inspiring for me.
Yeah.
I think for me, watching how they operate in quite a male dominated environment, and not losing anything, not taking on any of those sort of masculine behaviors, and almost they've influenced the men, I think, as well.
Yeah.
So I think for me, having, and I could name one or two, but I'm not going to name one or two. And I think they've had a phenomenal impact on me. And in particular, seeing women like myself, I think that that's really made an impact. I never thought I could be where I am, because I didn't have a role model. I thought, I'd get married, I'd have an arranged marriage, I'd have children. That was the path that was laid out for me.
Yeah.
And so it's given me a different perspective, seeing other women, seeing what they've done, and more importantly, I have two daughters. So, I've set the pace for them. So they've, what they've given me, I've passed down. And, that is, for me, that is priceless.
Yeah, I agree completely. And I think that, there's an expression, isn't there? You've got to see it to be it. We need to see role models. We need to see women doing, having careers, being in important roles, being in critical roles within organisations, because we want our daughters to see that that's possible. And I know that my 18-year-old daughter, she has a far different approach than I did, certainly when I was her age, because she definitely is kind of, right, bring it on. I can do any role I want to. I can take on any job I want to. So long may that continue. So I'm quite interested to know, and I think this is a more difficult question, but are there any businesses that stand out to you, Rajinder, when you're kind of looking at how they run their business, how things are done, that you're thinking, gosh, yeah, that's an organisation that's fit for the future. I like how they're working. Is there anybody that stands out for you in that area?
I think it's interesting, because I was thinking about this, and I guess Amazon is a big one that comes to mind. And I guess for me, again, it's because again, I look at the customer focus, and the customer service element of it.
Yeah.
And I also just think the scale. I think, to do something like that and to make it work on such a scale is quite an achievement. And I don't know, I just think that model works. And it was quite, it was quite groundbreaking, I guess.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So there's something, there's something there that, I'd quite like to unpick it and sort of almost look in and see, well, how did that bit work? And how did that bit work? And how do they do that? Because there's so many different facets of it. And I think to try and look at the whole thing is quite difficult, but just to look at elements of it and, really get under, almost really get under the bonnet of it and see how they done that.
They've turned the whole logistics industry on its head, haven't they? And I think that kind of idea, and again, last 18 months, then, we've all been, I'm sure, using Amazon more prolifically than we ever have done before. And, my husband was making comments about the number of times the Amazon man was coming, in kind of a raised eyebrow, kind of, oh, he's here again. It's like, well, I think that the fact that I can decide that I want something, I can go online and order it, and then literally tomorrow it will be on my doorstep, is just blows my mind. And I guess, we were talking earlier about the IT enabling things, then it would be really interesting to, as you say, look under the bonnet, see how it all works. And have an hour with Jeff Bezos. My God, that's going to be an interesting conversation, isn't it? So yes, I think Amazon are really a company of our times, and I'm sure that there are elements of the business that we wouldn't necessarily be inspired by, but there's a lot of good stuff in there. And my final question for you, Rajinder, is, and you can see by this kind of leaning tower of books behind me that I'm a big reader. I love books, always have done. I'm really interested to know, is there a book that you think we all should read?
The book that I read, which was one of the ones that I read for my coaching accreditation, was Nancy Klein's Time to Think.
Okay.
And I thought that was phenomenal in terms of just giving yourself space and time to think. And I guess it resonated with me as well, because we're all, I've always been so busy, you get caught up in the busyness. Yeah. And it actually took me back to where I got stuck as well. And I never took the time until I was coached to think. Yeah. Think about what was going on for me, what was going on around me, where did I want to go? How often do we take time to think? And during lockdown, just walking through the park, walking through the woods, and just taking time to think again, just brought that really to life.
Yeah. That really speaks to me. It's something that I keep coming back to, that I need to make time. I have a friend of mine who is a coach, and she uses this brilliant expression for when we have conversations, and she says that she holds the space, and I love it. It kind of just gives me a great image in my head. And she said you need to hold the space for that, and I guess it's another way, perhaps a prettier way of saying put it in your diary. Make sure that it's in your calendar to say, right, that's your time to think. So that is a really great recommendation. I haven't read it, and I'm going to. So thank you for that. And Rajinder, I could talk to you for hours, quite honestly, because I find you such an interesting and inspiring person. I'm so grateful to you for agreeing to come and appear on the Intuitive Insights podcast. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it, and the best of luck to you as you move on in your career. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
My huge thanks to Rajinder Pryor MBE for joining me on this episode of the Intuitive Insights podcast.